Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, and we're halfway into the season now, or we've just crossed over the halfway point. And what better to bring back one of the guests we had right at the start of the season, Will Buxton, who has now got 9 races under his IndyCar commentary belt, and a bit of time to reflect on the first half of the season. So, Will, great to have you back on. How have you sort of found the first 9 races or so of IndyCar commentary?
Hello, boys. Good to be back. Yeah, it's been great. I've really loved it. But it feels like 9 minutes, not 9 races. It's gone by so fast. And now here we are, like 5 races in 4 weeks, you know, crushing it through to the end of the season. By the end of August, we're done, which seems totally mad to me. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a huge learning period, both for me, Hinch and Townsend, the whole team, you know, behind the scenes. There is so much that we've taken on board, so much that we've needed to change week in, week out, and even kind of like day by day, there have been changes that have been rung on the broadcast. So, and that's been the biggest thing, really, is just how much learning there's been this year.
And I guess this is quite a big question for early on, but do you view it as a success so far? Like, are you and Fox happy with the job that has been done so far? Whether that's kind of, obviously the ratings is something people talk about, but also the actual broadcast.
Everyone talks about the ratings. It's all about the ratings. Yes. I don't think you can ever be 100% happy. I'm not 100% happy in the job that I've done. I know that we as a team are not yet 100% where we need to be or where we want to be. You know, that's just the nature of the beast. I think the figures, you know, they've been up and down. They've been good. Some of them have been disappointing. The 500 was especially good. And I think, you know, that the hope is that by the end of the year, the average, you know, comes out that it's an improvement. But the one thing that I would say when it comes to the figures, and something I think that we really need to keep in mind with this, is that this is year 1 of a very long project. You know, I look at when I did Formula One for NBC Sports. You know, when we were doing that, we were getting 500,000 viewers a race, and that was like a pretty even keel of what we were getting. We get about 1 million for Monaco. And, you know, with the Liberty takeover of Formula One and the growth of Formula One in the States, it didn't happen overnight. You know, they didn't get above 1 million consistently for the races until 6-8 years down the line. So if, you know, I don't think we can expect everything to be done, and we shouldn't expect everything to be done in 6 months. What I've found really impressive, beyond, you know, some of the sort of the headline figures that we've had on the races that have been really, really good, is actually the footfall at races. Now, for me, most of these races are new experiences, so I can't speak to it. But everybody that has experience of it, like, you know, Hinch, like Townsend, like talking to the guys at Penske and talking to the teams, the biggest thing that they've seen this year is how many people are actually at the races. So I think that the promotion that Fox is doing, and the real weight that they're throwing behind the championship, it's not just about figures in terms of what we're seeing people tuning in. It's the footfall, and it's the fact that the Indy 500 was a sellout. It's the fact that we had more people on a Friday at St. Pete than you'd normally see on a Sunday. And the Sunday was, you know, one of the busiest they've ever seen. Long Beach was, you know, massive success. And everywhere we go, it seems that more and more people are actually attending the races as well. So that, hand in hand with the positive stories over the actual viewership figures, I think is a real sign of the beginnings of the growth that we want to see in IndyCar. So look, this year is about planting the seeds. Then we've got to water them, let them germinate, let them grow, give them the light. You know, shine the light on them and let it grow. And that's what the next few years are about, is making sure that those seeds are given the best opportunity to, you know, to really flourish.
And I guess from that Fox perspective, you said there's been good, you said there's been bad. So what have the kind of biggest challenges or biggest wake-up calls maybe been?
How long have you got? Because it's really been a massive learning curve from day one all the way through. I think, you know, the pylon, I talked about this a lot, is one of those things where, you know, we had plans of what we wanted to do, how we wanted it to look within the first weekend. Some of those things were popular, some of those things weren't popular, so changes were rung immediately, and that's kept being added to and kept being amended, as I was saying, not just week on week, but sometimes day by day. We've gone from highlighting the top 5 to highlighting the top 3. Very small, subtle change that was made without much fanfare, but which has allowed us to kind of show the podium battle more than the top 5. And that is like a mindset change within the sport, as well as in terms of graphically how we're doing it. That then allows you to see more drivers underneath it. So the rotation, you're not missing out on quite as many drivers. And that small change has actually had quite a big impact. Qualifying and getting all of that sorted. And it's been tricky, because ultimately what we discovered early on was that we had a graphics package that was set up to run, we thought, perfectly. Then we have a data set coming in from IndyCar, and the two kind of didn't speak to each other. So we sort of had that hurdle to overcome. We almost needed like a Babel fish to have them understand each other. There were obviously frustrating moments in the Indy 500 where obviously the order kind of looked a bit messy. But I remember at that point the actual physical pylon at the track was showing the wrong order as well. So there's a lot of things that we're having to get on top of. And we're having to learn on the fly. So it's all learning, and it's all things that we take in. We're not just taking these lessons and saying, well, we'll change that for 2026. It's literally either the next day or the next weekend if it's a bigger thing. That if we have to fix it, we will fix it.
And I know we spoke about this in sort of February, March time, but it's been a very, very long time since you've been doing live commentary as opposed to doing the presenting side. So how have you found moving back into that role, maybe versus what you expected pre-season?
Tougher than I was expecting. I'm still far too much in the front of my head, not the back of my head. And I'm probably still trying a bit too hard, and I just need to kind of relax into it. Now we're half a season in. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to kind of to do that. But it's, there's so many facets to jumping back into the commentary box. For a start, it's having 2 co-commentators. That's something I've never had before. So kind of getting the cadence between the 3 of us right. There's things like, the commercial breaks and getting all of the 100% renewable fuel, those kind of lines in, and making sure we do all of that, and the big promos and everything. And fuel strategy. The biggest thing for me is, I'm from a world where fuel strategy hasn't existed in decades. So getting my head back on top of fuel strategy, that's been a big thing as well. And the fact that you're not just looking at a strategy and an alternate strategy, but then there's an alternate and maybe a 4th alternate, and then people jumping from one to the other because a yellow will come out at a certain time. So then people will pitch from strategy D to strategy B. Some will stretch from D to A, C to B, C to A to B. That's a lot to kind of get on top of. But again, every weekend is learning. Every weekend is gaining greater understanding.
I remember something that Louis Foster said to us at the start of the year. I think he said something like, it's almost like a video game when you're in the car and it's like someone's in front of you and then it's just like they quit from the game because he just has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. I think, Hunter Ray at the 500 was a really great example of that, because for such a long time, it looked like he was leading and having a great day purely because he was forced onto an alternate strategy and was just kind of leading by default. And then suddenly with about, however many it was to go, you're like, oh my God, actually, no, he can legit win this. This is now proper. And it's just keeping on your toes, trying to be aware of all of those things. And everyone's learning that together. Our director, Mitch Riggin, had never cut a lap of any racing, until the first laps were run at St. Pete. So for him, it's been a huge learning process. And for all of us on the crew, whether we've done motorsport before, whether we've done IndyCar before, or whether we come from any other sport, every single day has been a step into the unknown and a massive learning sort of curve.
And you obviously spoke to us pre-season about all the reading and the history and the statistics that you sort of did in preparation. So has that all paid off? Has that sort of sunk in? Have you been able to use all that preparation that you did?
I think the 500 was the biggest one for that. Just trying to cram in 100+ years of history and having fun little nuggets to throw in during rain delays, or because that was I loved that week of practice. That was probably my most enjoyable few days of the year so far, was just spending the entire day in the booth and the entire day just chatting about racing and IndyCar and the history and memories and all of that. That was great, you know. And the qualifying weekend is for me the most exciting, exhilarating 2 days in sport. I think it's just incredible. Possibly even more exciting than the race itself because of what's on the line and how long it lasts, and you know, the notion of sticking or twisting and all of that. I absolutely love it. So yeah, 500 was great for that. I think what I've realized with the sort of the deep set knowledge is when I'm looking at a race weekend this year, I've really had to just dial in on who's racing and what are their histories at the track and what are their histories in the championship, because I would love to go back and keep referring back to, you know, Dario and Zanardi and, you know, Tracy and Unser and, you know, well, Little Al and Bobby Unser and Alan Cecilia and, you know, and Foyt, and, you know, keep going back and back and back. But really, for us, I guess the gift in the early part of the season, and even now, is that Palou has gone on such a tear that actually you're kind of forced into talking about history, and you're forced into talking about where this stacks up in terms of the all-time great seasons. And so because of that, it's quite easy to go back and to find those statistics and to latch on to, well, this hasn't been done since, you know, we haven't had 2 winners in 9 races since 1980, and X, Y, and Z, you know, all of those kind of stats, they just naturally give themselves to you because of the run that Palou and Kirkwood are having.
And you sort of lead us very on nicely to sort of the Indy 500 time. And you spoke about those practice week or two, you've got a lot of time on there. You're on 4, 5, 6 hours a day. So how will you sort of manage covering that length of time with sometimes not very much to talk about and broadcasting back to back to back days?
That honestly, that was just great fun. It was just great fun. And I think it was fun up in the booth. I hope we kind of managed to mix sort of knowledge and information and, you know, stuff that we were talking to the drivers and the teams about, what was happening out on track, with a bit of history and a lot of fun, you know, not taking it seriously all the time, taking it very seriously when the big moments happened. But really just kind of allowing the 3 of us in the booth, and then the relationships with the gang down on pit lane, you know, hopefully allowing that to kind of flourish and show itself. And because we've got such a lovely team and everyone gets on so well, and hopefully that kind of transmits itself through the screen to everyone at home, because we loved that week. Like, that was so much fun. And I hope that the folks at home watching it kind of were carried along with that sense of fun as well, because that was great. I think pacing wise, I think next year we might try and do like just 2 of us in the booth and sort of mix and match, just to give ourselves a bit more time off, because honestly, by the time race day came around, knackered. Like, honestly knackered. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons for me for next year is, like, just take your foot off the gas 20% in the practice week. You know, I don't know, like, and the thrill of the grill, the Weenie 500s, you know, that was a whole thing as well. So it's honestly, though, those 2 weeks, I've never, you know, in my whole career, I've never had 2 weeks like that, of that intensity. It was huge fun, but by the end of it, like, you know, everyone needed a break. And then it was, we're straight off to Detroit. Like, like the May hangover is real.
And you mentioned the qualifying weekend being a real highlight. What do you feel it was that kind of made that so special for you? Because I always like to say, especially that Sunday, it kind of shows the brilliant brutality of Indy. And what was it like? Because that was obviously your first competitive call at the 500, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, I'd done the qualifying week before on NBC, and I'd been pit reporter for that. So there was almost a sense of familiarity to it for me. For the first time, I was doing something, and I was somewhere that I'd been before. So that was really cool. And that didn't really dawn on me actually until after the whole thing was over, as to why did that feel so good? And it was the familiarity of it. But those 2 days, yes, I've done it, but also I watch it every year, and you will not be able to tear me away from the television. I'm just glued to it for 2 days. I loved the storylines. I loved the narrative arc of that week of, Prema barely getting out on day one, Schwartzman doing less than 10 laps or however many it was, and then the kids on pole, and then the horrible situation of two teammates, in the runoff for the last place, and one of them having to bump the other. That was, as you say, like the brutality of it. That was just, whatever happened, it was going to be heartbreak. And the controversy, the Penske controversy, and the crashes. It's the first time using the hybrid there, and that extra weight on the rear. That as soon as the car started to go, like the guys, no matter how experienced, just like they found it so hard to bring it back. Everything about it was a thrill. Everything about it was truly exciting. So yeah, I loved that. If I could have 1 week back and do it all again exactly as it was, that qualifying week would be it. Everything else I can look at and really pick out points where I say, like, that should have been better, and that should have been better, and this should have been better. But that week, for this season so far, super happy with that.
You mentioned it. The first oval race you ever called was the Weenie 500 somehow.
The Weenie 500 forever. When people say, so your first oval call was the Indy 500, and I'll be like, yeah. Funny story. Actually, it was 6 giant hot dogs driving around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at 30 miles an hour.
I mean, the thing I really liked about that was you didn't make it too goofy, but it was like almost the sincerity of the commentary from you three made it even more amusing, I thought. Like, how did you go about approaching that? Exactly
that. We just said, look, this is fun, right? And it's going to be fun. But if we go into this trying to be too fun, it's going to feel hammy. It's not going to work. We've got to just approach this as seriously as we can, and then throw in some double entendres and throw in some as many references as we can, but let's go over the top serious, like way more than any race we've done this year. Like, this is once in a lifetime, man landing on the moon. You remember where you were when you saw it. And so then when you throw to the anthem and it's the Oscar Mayer Weenie song and all of those kind of things, like, because you're dealing with it seriously, it naturally became fun and funny and silly. And there was just something beautiful about it because it was really innocent and pure and just great fun. It actually took me a lap and a half to realize that the boys weren't doing sausage jokes; they were doing weenie jokes. But that was the big thing actually going into it, because I was saying to everybody, like, do I pronounce it weenie or wiener? Because I know that one thing means sausage and one thing in America means something else. So what do I call it? And they were like, well, actually, it's the Oscar Mayer Wien. They're called Wienermobiles, but they're Oscar Mayer Weenies, and it's the Weenie 500. But you can call them wieners. And I'm like, well, whatever I do is going to be wrong or right. So let's just go with everything and see what comes out in the mix.
I think my favourite was the Borg Weenie trophy. So they came up with
Borg
that,
Weenie trophy.
start.
Oh, honestly, all of it. Like the whole thing was mega and so funny. Like every time the New York dog went by, because obviously New York were playing Indiana in the NBA. They got the biggest boo every time they went past the grandstands, and there were 70,000 people there. Legitimately, the cheer at the end of that race. I've been at Grand Prix where the crowd hasn't been that loud for the winner. And I'm not making that up. It legitimately, like 70,000 people, all under the baking sun. They've probably all had a few beers, and everyone was just in their element, loving it. It was brilliant.
I'm a Knicks fan, so that was an awkward time for me. So we'll gloss by that very quickly.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
I mean, are we pushing to have the Weenie 500 back again next year?
I don't know what the plan is for next year. Like, how do you beat it? You know,
That's
do you
the thing.
bring it back and do the same thing again?
Get the drivers in it. That might make it more interesting. Championship points.
Do you know what? I don't know if they'd let the drivers out in it. Maybe it's a legends race. Maybe you have Mario and AJ and
team principals in there. That would be
brilliant. I love that. I absolutely love that. Yeah, something like that.
10 entrant points extra for each entrant that they provide.
Yeah.
You're winning 500.
But the thing is like these things are antiques. Like they're the proper Weenie mobiles. And so Wiener-mobiles, sorry, get that right. So, you know, you probably couldn't stick Dario and Kanan and all those guys in them because they take each other out and they're antiques.
It's a great point. I guess getting back onto the serious stuff now. I don't know how we get back onto the serious stuff after that, but
dude, I swear, like that's a sports Emmy.
It's
that
amazing.
Whole thing, like it was honestly so fun and honestly really really great to have that on Carb Day. Great for the fans. The fact it went as viral as it did as well, like it didn't matter that it was on Fox, it was on Sports Center, it was on the Pat McAfee show, it was everywhere. Huge success.
But yeah, so Indy 500 race day, I mean, you spoke a lot about kind of the responsibility. I guess how big did it feel? How did you manage the weight of that responsibility? And I guess, was it a case for you almost of like embracing the emotions that you were bound to feel with it being your first 500 race day as well?
I actually numbed myself out to it. And I just got into work mode. I just latched on to, right, you've got a pre-race show to do. This is huge. The folks in charge of it are the same team in charge of the Super Bowl. So number one, do not screw this up. You get one opportunity to, make a first impression. And that was going to be sitting on that desk with Danica and Townsend. I loved working with Danica, by the way. She was so gracious and so at ease being back in the IndyCar world. And it was lovely to see that side of her, that really knowledgeable, experienced side of Danica. And I loved working with her. She was great fun. But that whole pre-race show, Chris Myers is your main host. So you're like, okay, so you're going, alongside the best. And that was where my focus was, like totally on the pre-race. And then we get up to the booth and we're like, okay, that's done. That's the first hurdle done. And then we get to stand upstairs and watch all of the pre-race ceremony. And at that point, I'm so focused on the race and everything that it didn't really emotionally hit me. I was quite numb to it. And then they played taps, and then the hairs on the back of my arm stood up, and I got really emotional. And I was like, oh, okay, shit, this is really serious now, because 350,000 people, and you could hear a pin drop. It was, that was something else. And then I guess we were fortunate, or I personally was fortunate, that we had the rain delay, because what that meant was we had to then stand in front of the camera and do what we do at the start of every show, which is do some stuff to camera, chat about, the build up and how we've got here and how the grid was set and all of that. And if we hadn't had that, we would have gone straight into commentary, and that would have been, bam, you're in. As it was, we kind of had a normal intro to the show then. And it was like, oh, okay, this is comfortable. This is normal. This is just what we do. And so that was inadvertently, and completely by mistake, because of the circumstances of the rain, it actually allowed us a softer landing pad, I think, to go into the race.
Obviously, it was your first Indy 500, not only as a broadcaster, but obviously just there in general. So looking back on your first time, what were sort of your fondest memories and your just last impressions of the Indianapolis 500 compared to what you ever expected of it?
The fans, just so many people, and everybody's so lovely, and just great meeting hundreds, thousands of fans over those 2 weeks. Going out and painting, that was fun.
Did a good job as well. That was impressive.
No, I need to practice in oils. Watching Robert take pole, I was so pleased for him and so pleased for Prema. That was just a brilliant story. Connor being Connor and just doing Connor things as he does on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Palou as well. I was genuinely really happy for him. I think one of my happiest memories was actually the Indy GP, because my family were over for the month, and my daughter and Alex's daughter are very similar age. My youngest daughter, very similar age to Alex's daughter, and behind the podium, I was sort of getting ready to go and interview him after the Indy GP win, and our kids were just met and were just like sizing each other up and babbling away to each other. One of them in Spanish and one of them in English. Blah 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 blah. It was really cute. It was so sweet. So that was that. I loved that. That was a really lovely moment. Bumping into the guy who gave me one of the Culver blocks the last time I was at Indy. That was lovely. Just honestly, just every day there was something. Every day there was something that will stay with me forever. It was really incredible. Had a lovely dinner one night with Steve and Dave and Dario and Scott and Hinch. We all went out for dinner. That was mega. Honestly, guys, like a million incredible memories in 2 weeks. It was fabulous.
And I guess looking at the season as a whole, what have the biggest kind of surprises been, or just general takeaways compared to what you've been used to in the F1 world? Because obviously it's two different worlds, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. And that became very apparent to me after Thermal, because Thermal I really enjoyed. It was a track that felt kind of familiar. It felt like Ricard to me, like Paul Ricard. And then the race, you got McLaren 1-2 on the grid. Palou's doing Palou stuff, and he comes out in third, like 11, 12 seconds back, catches up, mega fight with Lundgaard, gets past him, gets to Pato, take the lead, runs away into the distance, wins the race. Power making up a million places in the race, moves going on left, right, and center. Like in F1 terms, that's a generational race. In IndyCar terms, it was a shocker. So I had to really quickly realign what I consider to be a good race, and what people expect from a good race. Because I'm sitting there going, that was entertaining, and the reaction on social was that was really dull. So it's like, wow, okay, we got a different barometer over here. That's a massive kind of wake up. I loved St. Louis, that whole weekend at Gateway. The race itself, just phenomenal. I really enjoy. I realized in that race how much I enjoy short course ovals. Just superb fun. Barber, one of the prettiest racing tracks I've ever been to. Where were we last time?
Road America.
Road America. Ah, bloody brilliant track. Yeah, that's the cool thing for me this year. Like, everywhere's new.
Everywhere's different as well. They're such a diverse range.
No, every road track is different. Every street track is different. Every oval has unique characteristics. That's what I love about it, is, the diversity of the tracks. And so then when you see a Palou, having a dominant year, you're like, it's not just because he's a specialist on one type of track. He's winning everything, and he's winning everywhere. And it's just really cool. So yeah, man, it's great.
And looking what's happened on track in the opening 9 races, is there anything that stands out from you? Do you have any big takeaways from sort of the first half of the season?
Again, like, how long have you got? There are so many stories that you can cover off. Penske having an absolute nightmare, a genuine nightmare. Palou being exceptional. Kirkwood announcing himself as the American open wheel driver of the moment, and not before time. I always felt like around 24, 25 is when he would really come into his own. I actually I did way back during COVID, I did an article for F1, like just a fun one, like, what will the grid look like in 2025, right? Got hammered for it because I was like, it's so unrealistic. And
I think it's done the rounds. The rounds.
Like, it was just supposed to be a bit of fun. But one guy who I thought would be at a level where he could race in Formula One, and I put Kirkwood in at Haas for 25. I just had this feeling like he'd come good in 25. I'm not saying I had a crystal ball or anything like that. I just had a feeling Kyle would be really firing by the time we got to 25. And sure enough, here we are, and he's killing it. Lundgaard with the strong start to the year, but the fall off through June, like major fall off through June. Pato has not been the headline guy, and we've barely seen him on screen, and yet consistently there, up in the top 3 in the championship. And all he needs is a couple of wins, and he's back on a run again. All the talk coming into the season was Malukas versus Power. Would Malukas get that Penske seat? But the more impressive Foyt driver for me this year has been Santino. I think Santino is probably the breakout star of the season. He's been absolutely sensational. I have been really impressed with his work ethic, been really impressed with his entire approach to the season. And the last time I saw Santino was when he was in Europe, and he left under something of a cloud. But the boy I knew then compared to the man that I've got to know this year, they are two completely different people. And, everyone deserves a second chance, I think. And Santino is taking his and is making the very best of it. And I'm really happy for him as well, because I've been very impressed by what I've seen of him. Connor just needs luck to go his way. Like, when we get to Iowa, if he doesn't win one of those, I'll be shocked, because he's so quick. And had the team taken a slightly different decision and done, I think they did tire pressures at the penultimate stop and then wing level at the final stop at Gateway. If they flipped that, they could have won that. So yeah, but that's it. And, look, we've got 2 winners for the year, but you look at, we've had 8 different drivers lead the most laps in races this year. Kirkwood's got 2. Palou's only got 1. So there's 6 drivers there who've led the most laps and haven't come away with the win, which tells you a lot about the way Palou goes about his racing, but also should tell you a lot about the fact that, yes, domination in terms of wins, but not domination in terms of who's been leading and who's been up front and, who's actually been taking the initiative and fighting away in the lead for most of these races. I think we've had 7 different pole sitters. We've had so much good stuff this season, but the headline remains Palou's unstoppable. And I genuinely think Palou is, one of the most complete drivers in the world right now. He's just phenomenal.
I guess kind of latching off the back of that, when you have someone like Palou dominating in a championship that has obviously been kind of known and has got its name for being competitive, unpredictable, he's bringing this like inevitability to it. So as a broadcaster, what do you guys have to do to try and keep it exciting? Is it that case of, okay, everyone's chasing Palou? Is that the kind of story you have to run with?
You can run with that, but when he has a 2-win advantage over the rest of the field, it's difficult to argue that. I guess I'm fortunate in so much as, again, I've come from a world where domination is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. My first season in Formula One, Michael Schumacher won the World Championship at the French Grand Prix, which I think was in June. What did we talk about for the next 4 months? Alex isn't going to win the championship with 4 months of the season to go, because there's only 2 months of the season to go. So we're lucky with that. What you have to do at this point, and listen, again, I've done Vettel winning 4 on the bounce. I've done Lewis going through his epic period in Formula One. I've done Max being unstoppable and almost winning every race. Red Bull, almost winning every race in a season. At that point, what you have to do is you have to relate it to history, and you have to tell the story through the lens of history. Yes, this may look like a period of sort of domination and, as you say, predictability or inevitability within a sport which is renowned for its unpredictability. So if this sport is renowned for its unpredictability, what does it take to go on this kind of a run? How good do you have to be to go on this kind of a run when this championship is known for being unpredictable? And that's the story you have to tell. You also have to tell the story of how rare that is, and the fact that only the all-time greats have been on these kind of a run, that even Mario never achieved this kind of a run, that it goes all the way back 65 years to AJ and what he did in the early 60s. No one of our generation has seen this. And that's something very, very special and very unique. And it's also something very special and unique to motorsport, that we can and we should and we do celebrate domination and success, because we know what it takes to achieve just one win. So to keep that level week in, week out, to the point where Scott, greatest of all time, arguably, certainly one of the greatest of all time, 2-time champions in Power and Newgarden, no one's got an answer for this guy. All right? How is he so good? And that's your job then, is to tell that story and to tell people when they're tuning in, come and witness greatness. Come and see something which may never be done again in our lifetimes for another 60 years, because that's the last time this happened. That's how rare it is. So rather than looking back in 10 years time, rather than talking it down now and going, he's winning everything, it's boring. And then 10 years, 15 years down the line, once he's retired, going, bloody hell, do you remember 2025? Palou was great, wasn't he? Wasn't he mega? How about we say, he's great, isn't he? Rather than he's great, wasn't he? I'd rather celebrate that level in the moment than look back in hindsight and wish I'd given it the props when it was happening.
I feel one thing that we've seen during the year is Fox bring a new element to every race, whether that was the driver's eye we saw in Long Beach or the drones we saw in Barber, and sort of race on race, it feels like there's more and more being added to the package. So is there more plans of stuff that Fox do want to bring, or?
Oh yeah. And the thing is, a lot of them, they're quite expensive to bring in. So some of them, they were planned before the season that they would appear at certain races. So I know we had driver's eye for the first couple of races, and then everyone was like, where's driver's eye gone? It's like, well, it's coming back. And similarly with the drones, we can use them at some races, not all of them. It really does depend on, on where we're at as to where we can use them. And also whether it's worth using them. Do they bring a new perspective, or are we just using it for the sake of it? And you never want to do anything for the sake of it. So a lot of it, at the moment is making sure it works. Proof of concept is huge because they're new. There's a cost obviously aligned to it, and then hopefully it does work. So then end of the season, they can go back to the bosses and be like, we want that at every race, please. Those kind of things. So yeah, the objective was always, let's try and do things a bit differently. Let's shake it up a bit and try and bring some new things in. The warm-up show has been really fun, and we've really enjoyed doing that. And hopefully we'll get a wider window to be able to run that show next year and take it up from being the 30 minutes it is now to 45, or hopefully even an hour next year, which would give us, the ability to have pre and post, because obviously we're aware that, you're not always going to have a pre-race show for the race itself. And so what we wanted the warm-up to be was almost a pre-race show while there's on-track action happening.
The British fans and maybe the entire international feed got a bit of a taste of this at Thermal. So can we expect more Christopher Walken impressions between now and the end of the season?
That's a question for Hinch, man. That was good, wasn't it? That surprised me. Hinch does a mean Christopher Walken impression. That is, you see, these are things I'm discovering about my colleagues that I never knew. I know Prince Hinch pretty well, but I did not know he could do such a brilliant Christopher Walken impression. That was deeply impressive.
And we spoke about this briefly off camera before we started, but obviously Brad Pitt in the F1 movie has been in the news in recent weeks, and obviously you've got some role in that film. So I know Brad Pitt's been speaking about IndyCar and his fandom. So do you know how much fandom Brad Pitt does have towards IndyCar?
Huge. So I caught up with Brad in New York at the US premiere, and he was like, "Dude, how's IndyCar?" And I'm like, "It's going great." And he's like, I can hear you're enjoying it. I said, what do you mean you can hear I'm enjoying it? He's like, I watch every race. I'm like, shut up. He's like, no, I watch every race. I'm like, get out. He's like, don't tell me what happened at Gateway. I haven't watched it yet. So he was waiting to get home to watch Gateway. Like, he's locked in. He's properly locked in. He loves it. He's a petrol head. He loves his racing. Yeah. Brad Pitt's a fan. What can we say? Loves his IndyCar. He knows his racing.
And I mean, you were obviously involved in the F1 movie. I've not seen it yet. I don't think you have either, Dan, have you? But you did you were on screen, you were consulting. So how did that come about? What was that experience like for you as well? Obviously before you came over here. Yeah,
it was incredible. So I was kind of part of it for a big chunk of the 2 years. I met Jerry and Joe when the movie was first announced, and they asked me to be the sort of MC to do an interview with the two of them at an event that was being hosted in Miami. And got on the call, and they said, obviously in preparation for making this movie, they'd watched all of Drive to Survive, and so they knew me from that, which was like, oh my God, Jerry Bruckheimer and Joe Kosinski know who I am. This is a bit mad. And then like a couple of weeks later, Joe reached out and said, would you mind taking a look at the script? I was like, sure. Okay. Okay. And he's like, send me some notes. And so I just, pages and pages and pages of notes and sent them back. And I had a back and forward with that a few times. And then he was like, I'd like you to come to the script read. So I went to the script read. Never done the table read. And I've obviously never done a table read in my life. And I thought I was just going to sit there and be watching. But he asked me to do the commentary lines that ended up being done by Crofty and Brundle, and then like the reporter lines and all that. So I was doing the table read with Brad and Javier and Damson and Sarah and Tobias Menzies, and Jerry's there and Joe's there, and it was like, this is nuts, like this doesn't happen in real life. This is insane. And then yeah, like got a call, and I think my agent had been absolutely hammering Apple. But then we got a call from the guys, and they were like, we'd love you to do some scenes. This is, we want you to be you. These are the scenes that we thought. Here's the script back, and, you okay with those scenes? I was like, sure, yeah, great. And I did my first scene was with Brad and Damson and about 100 extras, and I'm just about to do the scene for the first time, and Brad's like gets up and he says, like, just so everyone knows, Will's never done a scene before, so nobody make him feel awkward, and Will, don't fuck it up. And the whole place bursts out laughing, and I'm just standing there like, head in my hands, like, oh my god, like huge pressure. And it was great. It was really, really fun. They were amazing. They properly embraced the sport and became a part of the sport. Grand Prix, the film in 1966, the John Frankenheimer movie, was a huge touchstone for Kaczynski, because what Frankenheimer did was followed the circus around for a season and filmed at every race. And that's exactly what Joe wanted to do with the F1 movie. But then obviously the SAG strike hit just as they were about to start filming in 23. So they carried on filming through the second half of the year, but they couldn't use any of the SAG affiliated actors. So what that did was it actually allowed them to go back over the winter, do a first cut of the movie with everything that they had filmed, and then figure out what extra material they needed to get and where they needed to film the actors and how they needed to make it work when the actors came back to work after the strike. And then they filmed all of that in 24. So it actually did them a bit of a favor. But they were fully involved for 2 whole seasons in Formula One. It's just an unbelievable undertaking. And the movie, I hope you guys like it when you see it. It's big, it's brash, it's Hollywood. It's super fun. And, you can't go into it expecting it's going to be a documentary, because it's not a documentary. Cinema is supposed to be escapism. It's supposed to take you out of the ordinary and place you into the imagination of those who are creating it. But what I love with, the strategies that they employ and some of the moments in the races, some people will be like, it's not realistic. But I swear, every single person, whether you work in racing or not, after a race will have said, wouldn't it have been great if they just tried this? Or wouldn't it have been great if he, he should have hit him. Like, he should have nerfed him out for that. Right? We've all had those discussions, and Hollywood's made it real, which I think is really cool, because every one of us at some point has said, wouldn't it have been great if? And that'll be one of the moments in the movie. I loved it. It was great. It was really fun.
I know we're an IndyCar podcast, but this sort of thing, a bit like Drive to Survive, can be good for motorsport as a whole, can't it?
Huge. And this is it. The rising tide lifts all ships, and hopefully the F1 movie, people will watch it and be like, open wheel racing is cool. Let's go. Let's go to Iowa. There's a race in Toronto. Let's head down there, because Canadian Grand Prix already happened. So if you're in Canada, let's go to Toronto. Let's go to Laguna Seca. Let's go to Nashville. Like, America gets to have incredible open wheel racing pretty much every weekend for the next 2 months. There is an opportunity to go and see incredible racing drivers, racing cars built for combat every weekend in the IndyCar series. So I hope that people who've watched it will obviously love Formula One, but also will be open to the fact that open wheel racing is very cool, and come and watch some IndyCar off the back of it as well. Because Brad is, so,
So you should too.
Anyway, Will, you go into a very busy schedule. You've got 5 races in 4 weeks, so I think we'll save your voice and cut
Thanks.
it.
Thank you, boys.
Got a lot of commentary to do, but we're very much looking forward to it. I mean, as you said right at the start, it's always such a slow start to the season. It feels too slow. You're slowly getting into it, and you get to this point, and you're like, oh my goodness, we're 2 months away from Nashville. We've got to wait 6 months for it to all go over again.
It's crazy, isn't it? I think next year's calendar will be slightly different. I think the opening stanza of the season will be pretty entertaining from what I've seen of it. So yeah, excited, really, really excited for 2026. But we've got 2025 to conclude first, and I think we're going to get, if anybody breaks the Kirkwood and Palou domination, I've got a funny feeling it's going to be a first-time winner. I think we're going to see a Santino or a Connor, maybe on a, like on an Iowa or something. I think we could see one of them do something pretty special.
We'll clip that. We'll come back to it after Iowa and see how well that fares. Great prediction. This podcast is all about predictions. You had some hideous ones this season. Schwartzman being bumped from the Indy 500 was
not my proudest.
I brought that up with him. I said, everyone had you down. You were the one that was going to get bumped. I actually, do you know what was really funny? I actually said to Hinch on the Friday, we were driving home on the Friday as a 500 on practice week, and colleagues were saying, we're like, what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think is going to get bumped? And I said, who do you think is going to get bumped? And I think Hinch said Schwartzman's going to get bumped. And I went, nah, mate, he's going to be on pole. And he was like, shut up, okay, whatever. And we carried on driving and never said anything again. And then after the quali, I kind of looked at him. I was like, I told you. And he was like, no, you're not having that as a prediction. Absolutely not. So, yeah, good fun.
Amazing.
That's a great way to end. Will, we thank you again for your time. You're obviously very welcome back on the show. I appreciate you're a bit busy at the minute, so I'll leave you to do your commentary, but you're welcome back at any time.
Guys, I come back anytime you want. It's a joy as always. Thank you so much for all you do in promoting IndyCar. It's mega. I love reading the articles, love listening to the pod. So thank you for having me on.